The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
So he didn't want to get divorced. Did he tell you what he wanted to do?
Yes.
What did he say?
He mentioned his plan to get rid of her.
Still on his phone, out to his car, and we see his vehicle leave the area. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You know that he had blood on his hands, correct?
He did have blood on his hands. Looking at the first officer entering the room, he did have his hands on her neck.
All eyes on the Virginia courtroom this morning as the defense case begins in the Au Pair Affair murder trial. So we're taking a look back at how little we've heard from the defendant up until this point. And from forensic clues to emotional testimony, is it enough for a conviction? We're taking a close look at the Commonwealth's case. Plus, actor Timothy Busfield is out on bail, and a polygraph played a part. We're talking about how reliable those tests are. Plus, former fire chief Kevin West guilty of murdering his wife Marcy. We're breaking down what he said that might have swayed the jury. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Wednesday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? It's that time where we get all warmed up together and ready for the big day ahead on Court TV Live. We got a big show planned, so let's get it started. Grab that cup of coffee. It's time for my opening statement. Ding, ding. I hear the fire truck. The battalion chief's pants need extinguishing. The jury found Kevin West guilty of murdering his wife, Marcy. The prosecution proved that he strangled his beautiful wife, Marcy, to death on the same day that he was going to leave her to go be with his mistress, now fiancée, Cynthia. Guess that wedding won't happen unless somebody on the cell block is going to officiate. With the guilty verdict, we can see that the jury didn't believe his story about Marcy having a seizure the morning after an intense massage. That was hogwash. The members of the jury used their common sense. They recognize that you don't get bruising underneath your jawline and your earlobes and brain swelling and hemorrhaging from a massage. You get it when somebody strangles you with their hands. My friends, this case is domestic violence. He ended the life of the woman he married and the mother of his 2 children. This was a brutal, calculated act of domestic violence that this cheater thought would eliminate having to pay for a divorce. Well, congratulations, cheapskate. You not only racked up legal bills trying to fool the jury with your garbage story, but you also bought yourself a one-way ticket to prison. And once you get to prison, you want to be careful with all those hugs because you might give somebody the wrong idea. That's my opening statement on this Wednesday morning. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
I heard my mom and Kevin talking about placing the knife in his hand. I heard Kevin say, be careful, he might still be kicking. Like to be careful.
Oh, in Utah, we've got the case that many refer to as the Utah Adelsons. So we have a plot where a man is accused of killing his brother-in-law. The plot allegedly also involves his sister and his mother. Okay, so this is why you can see some refer to it as the Utah Adelsons. Defendant Kevin Ellis admitting that he shot Matthew Rastelli, but saying he did it in self-defense. Court's going to start up 10:30 this morning. In New Jersey, state's case continues 8:30 a.m. Eastern in the Mansion murders trial for defendant Paul Canero. And in Texas, we've got closing arguments in the Uvalde school massacre trial for former police officer Adrian Gonzalez. Court starts up 10 a.m. Eastern time. Right now, to your top story, the case begins in the Au Pair Affair murder trial today for the defense. Brendan Banfield is the defendant here, and we're going to take a close look at the evidence from the Commonwealth. Did they prove their case? Remember, they've got the burden. We heard a bloodstain analyst take the stand Monday, her testimony seeming to support their contention that Banfield staged the crime scene to try to frame Joseph Ryan for his wife Christine's murder. Expert testified that there was blood flow on Joseph Ryan's face traveling in different directions. Blood on Joseph Ryan's hands that was transferred there from an object. And blood on Ryan's hands that flowed down toward his elbow, not toward his wrist. So what do you think so far? Has the Commonwealth proven its case? Here to talk about it, let's bring in two people that have a lot of experience prosecuting cases. Current prosecutor Kevin Brackett and retired prosecutor Josh Markey. Good morning to you both. Kevin, I'll begin with you. Your thoughts on whether the Commonwealth has proven the charges they've sought out to prove against Brendan Banfield.
I certainly think they've made a very strong case. A lot's going to turn on how the jury views the testimony of the co-defendant. If they believe her that, this was all a setup and all the other evidence dovetails with what she testified to, I think that they have made a very strong case for guilt here.
Let's take a look at a clip here. I have a clip from Gary Benson. This is going to the bruising and the bloody noses. Here we go.
Remembering Christine's childhood, did you observe any medical symptoms that gave you concern?
Yes, several bruising, bloody noses.
Were they more than the average child's experience?
Yes, it was a concern to a pediatrician as well.
Okay, Josh Markey, to you next, please. Your thoughts whether the Commonwealth has proven its case?
They've gone a far way, and obviously the evidence of what would have originally been the co-defendant is incredibly powerful. I was watching, and I do think that they may be overlying a little bit on the blood evidence. Juries can get lost in that, and we saw that back in the O.J. Simpson case where there was much more compelling DNA evidence. But frankly, after days and days of testimony, the jury kind of gets lost in it, and the defense exploits that and says, really, is the state just relying on this, and is that the only way to interpret it? And of course, it's not the only way to interpret it.
Right. You talked about the au pair. We got a clip from her. Let's take a look.
He basically said divorce was not an option.
So he didn't want to get divorced. Did he tell you what he wanted to do?
Yes.
What did he say?
He mentioned his plan to get rid of her. He got on top of her, and that's when I first saw him stabbing her with a knife.
Okay, so we know the au pair testified that he created this plot, participated in it, involved her in it, all of that. But we don't just have her testimony, right? Kevin, we also have other supportive evidence. We've got video evidence. We've got blood stain evidence and spatter evidence. We have other things that the Commonwealth is offering. Do you think that they have told this story in an effective way so that the jury is getting that it's not just the au pair that they need to rely on here?
Yeah, I think the au pair's testimony, Julie, is going to be sort of like the center of it, that the rest of the evidence orbits around. I think that a lot of what the jury's going to have to decide is whether or not all of the evidence sort of is compelling in that it makes sense and corroborates itself. Josh is right. Bloodstain evidence, it can be extremely powerful if it's presented correctly, but it can also be very confusing, and a jury can get lost in the nuances of it and the complexities of blood spatter analysis and interpretation. If it's presented correctly, it can be very compelling and very powerful. A lot's going to come down to what the defense is able to put up to establish and undermine the credibility of the co-defendant. Attacking her, obviously she was facing the same charges that he was, facing the same amount of time. They're going to hammer away at the fact that she has very, very powerful motives to lie, to get some benefit for herself. A lot's going to come down to how effectively the jury is able to exploit that and present that to the jury in a way that makes sense to them and makes them question her credibility.
Right. Great points, Kevin. You know, as you were talking, it got me thinking. We had the blood expert yesterday, and the Commonwealth was trying so hard to get out of her the opinion that Joseph Ryan's body was moved, and she couldn't quite get there. It was a little bit of a clumsy, broad question that she ended on. Defense counsel, he's seasoned, got right up, lodged the objection, and she ended on that objection. Wondering, should they call a crime scene reconstructionist? Josh, do you think they need someone like that in this case?
Well, it would be really helpful. The problem is, and the reason that blood expert was treading so carefully, is there have been a series of cases in the last few years where prosecutors have put on blood spatter type evidence, and frankly, it's not that it's junk science, it's that it's been overvouched. By which I mean, yes, it can help the jury answer questions, but it's not definitive. And I think as I was watching that woman's testimony yesterday, I thought she's being very careful not to say, no, this absolutely definitively proves that. And I think the state, and I agree with my colleague, that what's really going to matter is, do they believe this woman, who was then a 20-year-old au pair, and what is her motivation other than not wanting to go to prison for making up this incredibly elaborate story? Let's not forget that the main defendant was a criminal investigator for the IRS with considerable skills as an investigator.
Right, Josh, great point. You know, Kevin, and to that point, we know the au pair said that he was mindful the whole time through the plotting, planning, scheming that was going on, that he knew an investigation was coming because of his experience, and he knew everything was going to be looked at. Yeah. Looks like he did a pretty good covering his tracks. If he did this, if he was behind it, so much so that his DNA prints not on that knife. Kevin, how big of a deal do you think it is that we've got Joseph Ryan's DNA, we know because he brought the knife, Christine's DNA, presumably because she's fighting against the knife, doesn't want to be stabbed with it, but the defendant's DNA isn't on it. What do you think, Josh? Or excuse me, Kevin. I meant to throw it back to you, Kevin.
That's okay. Yeah, I think, you know, to give the devil his due, it is very a crafty, cunning plan that, you know, if all this is true, to come up with the whole luring him there under the pretext of you know, on the fetish website, all of that, you know, the time that he had to prepare and plan will cut against him as well. I mean, the fact that that evidence is not there is going to be used by the defense, but at the same time, he had time to plan for that, so that can be explained away by the prosecution. I mean, clearly this was well thought out. It wasn't, you know, a spur of the moment, heat of passion, you know, impulse decision. This was an elaborately planned killing.
Right, Kevin. Yeah, it makes you wonder, did he wear gloves if he did this? Did he have time to dispose of them before first responders got there? I think the prosecution, as you said, needs to explain, drive that home, you know, perhaps in close, or if he testifies, cross him on it. We'll see. Kevin Brackett, I know we have to let you go. Thank you for making time for us this morning. Josh is coming with us. You do the same at home. Friends, please, when we come back, here's what's next.
Is it possible that Mr. Busfield inappropriately touched SL on the set of The Cleaning Lady?
No. If the child was on set, there was at minimum of 10 people there on the set with them.
Wow. Maybe things are turning. Sure sounds like it in the case against Timothy Busfield. He's out on bail this morning, proclaiming his innocence, and his defense team really hanging their hat on his polygraph passing. We'll talk about it next. Plus, the cheating fire chief convicted of murdering his wife, Marcy. We're going to unpack the key moments, things he might have said that influenced the jury.
The Court TV podcast will return.
I'm not going to prohibit your travel. I understand you may not live here, but you will need to report to pretrial services here. You're not to possess any firearms or dangerous weapons. You're not to possess or consume any alcohol or illegal drugs. You must notify the court of your address. You're not to have any contact with the alleged victims or their families, and you're also not to discuss the case with any witnesses. That's what the attorneys and their investigators are there to do.
Melissa Gilbert getting emotional there in the courtroom as her husband, Timothy Busfield, is told that he'll be released from jail ahead of his upcoming child sex abuse trial. The actor and director appeared in front of a judge in New Mexico on Tuesday for a bond hearing. Busfield is being accused of touching minors inappropriately on a TV set. Now, after arguments, the judge was not persuaded that Busfield is a danger to the community, as the prosecution was saying he was. The judge said, quote, "There's no evidence of a pattern of criminal conduct, so he should not be behind bars as he's awaiting his trial." Busfield submitted letters to the court vouching for his character, and his attorneys say that he also passed an independent polygraph test. And in the polygraph, Busfield denied touching intimate parts of the child actor referred to as SL. Now, New Mexico, interestingly, is among a few states in America that allow polygraph evidence into criminal cases, but the judge has the final say. So should the polygraph evidence be allowed here if there's a trial? Let's talk about that. Let's bring in retired sergeant and detective with the NYPD, Dan Murphy, and breaking news reporter for The Guardian, Danny Angiano. Good morning to you both. Thank you for waking up with us. Sarge, I'll start with you, please. Your thoughts on him passing the polygraph, New Mexico allowing it to come in, and what you think overall about whether it should be a part of this trial.
Well, in my experience, polygraphs have never been allowed in any area that I worked in terms of being admitted into evidence. In this case, any polygraph can be very subjective. What are the questions that are being asked? Who's asking them? In what context? What's the machine calibration? All these sort of things come into play. Just a blanket statement that he passed an independent polygraph, to me, needs some exploration. There's a lot missing from that statement.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate your insight on this and experience, because we know that many courts, as you know, do not allow them in for reasons of reliability. So it's interesting here. This may be very fortunate for him if the judge does permit it in this case because of the laws on the books in New Mexico. And Danny, I want to go to you on something else. It seems that after this very emotional day and such an outpouring of support for Timothy Busfield, and the judge not persuaded by what the state has, not persuaded by the evidence, noting a lack thereof, noting he has no criminal history, all that, letting him out. Are you seeing in Hollywood any support maybe coming forward that we hadn't seen with the announcement of the charges?
We haven't seen that quite yet, but he did receive really high levels of support directed at the judge. There were more than 70 letters that were written for him. Some of those were written by former co-stars, husbands. So we have seen that. But the implications to his life and career are already underway. You know, he's been cut out of a movie that he was scheduled to be in. A Law & Order SVU episode that he was in was pulled. His talent agency has dropped him. So we've seen pretty severe repercussions and no additional sense of support quite yet, but we will see.
Mm-hmm. Right. You know, and that's a great point. A lot of this happening in the courtroom, as you noted, Danny, the letters to the judge, and that's the way it should go. I want to talk a little bit about Melissa Gilbert with you, Danny. We see her so emotional. We know she's a beloved star, child actress, been in Hollywood a long time. What do you think this means, that she's standing by her man so publicly, so closely, traveled to New Mexico for this? How much weight do you think this carries in the court of public opinion?
Carries a tremendous amount of weight. As you said, she's a very beloved child star, and she has really made it very clear that she's incredibly supportive of him. She wrote this sort of just glowing letter to the judge, testifying to his character, saying that he has the strongest moral compass of anyone she's ever met. And so I think those things and her appearance in court where she is, just kind of so clearly overcome with emotion, with gratitude that he was going to be released, I think those things do stick out to the public.
Yeah, definitely, Danny. The director of photography on The Cleaning Lady, this is the film where this incident in question might have occurred. The director of photography testified that the kids were never left alone with any individuals on the set, that the parents were the ones who encouraged hugs with adults on the set. Busfield's attorney says that the accused boys' parents, the parents of the accusers, the children, Busfield's attorneys were saying that these parents might have coached the kids toward making incriminating statements after the boys lost roles on the show. So that's something coming out now, the boys losing these roles. So let's take a deeper look here about what was not disclosed to police during this investigation. We have a clip.
Officers are not supposed to speak with children, right, because of the power dynamic, and they want to make sure they're getting a reliable disclosure. So it's not uncommon that the kids did not disclose at that time or were ready to disclose at that time to a police officer that showed up at their house.
Okay, now the defense presented then their own piece of evidence, which was a recording of the police interview with the minors at the center of these allegations. Let's listen.
You know what's right and wrong, right? You know where people can't touch, where people can't do. Yeah, you know that, right? Does Tim ever do that?
No, he's never touched me.
Never touched you?
Yeah.
In like, your private areas, right?
Yeah.
Never did that?
Never.
You know what's right and wrong, right?
Yeah.
You don't know when you could touch your private areas?
Yeah, but he doesn't touch them.
Doesn't touch your private parts? Okay.
That's not, Your Honor, a failure to disclose. That's an express denial.
Okay, we're going to stay away from the legal arguments right there, because I am so stunned hearing this. Detective Sergeant Dan Murphy, I want to go to you. Your thoughts now hearing the children say this didn't happen.
Well, that's a very damning statement for the prosecution. I don't know how you get around that or get over it in terms of making your way towards probable cause without some corroboration. Now, the situation as I know it is this. These children were on set, always surrounded by parents and other people. There was never an opportunity, at least by witnesses who I'm hearing, never an opportunity for Timothy Busfield to be alone with these children. There's lots of eyes on the set. No one has ever reported seeing anything like this. The children, when interviewed, come forward and say right away, nope, very quickly, no, he never did that. I'm not understanding where or at what point during that conversation or a subsequent discussion with those children by different authorities or different persons from the court, how they came forward with this idea that he did this. I think they have mountains to climb with this case. I think that it's problematic to say the least. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, given what I'm hearing so far. I don't understand how we are where we are.
Right, Sarge, right. I'm just gobsmacked at this. When that came out yesterday, because if you have the children, and you heard the lawyer say it, I'm assuming she's the prosecutor, the way she's arguing about this, and express denial. Like, so these kids are both saying it did not happen. And then you have witnesses like the director of photography saying the kids were never alone with him. And then you hear them saying the parents, were encouraging hugs and contact, that a hug is fine, or as we know. How do we get to the charging? You raised a great question. Danny, I'd love your thoughts on this. Did this stun you?
Hearing that was quite shocking. That express denial is just not something that you really expect to hear. That said, the prosecutor did make a point to sort of preface a lot of what we heard in the courtroom by saying that these admissions were made to other people, to a therapist, to a doctor, and pointing out that a doctor was in fact the one that made one of the reports about child abuse. So, and the prosecutor went to great lengths to say that this sort of thing is normal, but I do think that that seems like a tremendous burden to have to overcome when you have a child on tape saying that something didn't happen.
Right. Boy, Danny, thank you so much for that. You're so knowledgeable. So if these children said these things in settings where they have perhaps been more comfortable, like, you know, a therapist's office, something like that, versus what they said to a police detective, Sergeant Murphy, I mean, you were a boss in the NYPD. You know, how do you reconcile that if, you know, if your people come to you with, you know, look, we got conflicting statements from these children?
In a case like this, we would be dealing very closely with the prosecutor's office for their legal opinion as to whether or not what we have is worthy of going forward with an indictment or an arrest. In this situation, it's very confusing. I haven't seen the evidence of testimony or written documents provided by the doctor, therapist, or anyone else who claims to have heard these children make these statements. Now, when you're interviewing children, there's a dynamic at play that's very different than with adults. Children are susceptible to suggestion. They're susceptible to a lot of things, as humans are, as adults are, I'm sorry. But during a conversation with children, you have to understand that sometimes they will say what they want they think you want to hear, or they think will make the conversation easiest if it's uncomfortable and make it go away. And in this case, that may be the case. We don't know.
Yes, boy, such great insight. As always, Sergeant Dan Murphy with the Gold Shield Show. Thank you kindly. Breaking news reporter with The Guardian, Danny Angiano, up early for us. Thank you kindly as well. We appreciate you. We'll see you both soon. When we come back, we're talking about Kevin West, the fire chief, and his pants being on fire. Plus, the defense taking over today in the Au Pair affair murder trial. We haven't heard much from Brendan Banfield, though. Will that change?
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Welcome back. We're shining a spotlight on the cheating fire chief murder trial with a focus on the moments that secured that guilty verdict against Kevin West. The former battalion chief found guilty of first-degree murder, killing his wife Marcy by strangulation. This was in 2024. West testified in his own defense, explained a way that she had had a massage and she had a seizure, and the jury didn't buy it. We think that perhaps it was his own statements that swayed the jury. So let's talk about this. Here to break it all down, jury consultant and human behavior expert Susan Constantine is with us. Susan, good morning. We have some clips we want to show you, please, and let us know what you think and whether this was perhaps some convincing he didn't want to do. So here's him getting emotional on the stand just minutes after he got up there on direct, talking about his marriage to Marcy.
How was your marriage starting out? I would race down there just to see her during the academy. We were very much in love.
Okay.
All right, Susan, what do you think?
Well, first of all, it doesn't answer the question. It takes a little bit for him to actually get there. He doesn't say, he says, you know, did he love his wife? And then he goes on to this little dissertation and a presentation, which they tend to do. When people are lying, they give a lot of buildup. And there is a ratio that we look at, the build up, the story, in the end. The fact that he actually had to build it up before he actually said that he loved his wife, but he also spoke about her in present tense. So he should have been speaking about her in past tense. So the fact that he was running down there to go see her, I guess he's using this running as an active movement, right? He's just like, I would go there very quickly. Why was he using quickly? Because he was trying to set a scene. And this is what they do. They set a narrative and they try to bring the viewers or the jury along with them to view it in a certain way. And when you watch his expressions, you'll notice that he only shows sadness down here and not here. And because you can fake it and it's not synchronized. And so when I look at the top versus the bottom, they should synchronize and show all of the action units, the movements that are consistent with sadness. Instead, he's got trying to convince you, the raised eyebrow, convince me what I'm telling you. He's trying to sell his story. And then we see a lot of the oral stuff that's kind of around his mouth. That's all performance. That's not even real. You can see the overplaying of that. That's not how real emotions fleet on and off the face. And there is a duration of an on and on offset to make it believable. So I call, that's phooey.
Yeah, pants on fire. Fire chief's pants on fire, Susan. Yes, I have another clip for you. This was one of my favorite moments here. I have to hand it to defense counsel. This was good. This was good. He got him out of the witness box to do a demonstration and kind of teach the jury, really drawing upon his experience as an EMT. So let's watch.
One arm underneath her shoulders and one arm underneath. And as I brought her out, I brought her to my knee, and then I brought her to the floor. I couldn't support her weight. She was, I couldn't support her and even lift her and then set her down, but I brought her to my knee.
Susan, what'd you see?
Sure, the first thing he comes out of here doesn't say, he says one arm. So if I'm missing one piece of it, he's missing the I pronoun. So that's significant because that actually puts him in the scene, right? So he doesn't put him in the scene until after, then he says he puts his one hand underneath him. The thing is that what he's doing is he is giving you demonstrative visual evidence, so to speak, to showing him what he probably does with any other patient or client, because he's a firefighter if he's got to rescue them. Then after he's all finished, you can see this little pausing and hesitating. He's got these hand shrugs. Hand shrugs are associated with deception. There's this pause, there's this hesitation. So I look at vocal flow. And so when the flow breaks up, when he says, and that's what happened, kind of in that sense, that is always problematic for me. So I've got to look at why did it flow before that and then it doesn't flow. So there is a shift or a change in that baseline. Then he puts his hands in front of him. He takes a deep breath. And so what he's doing is looking at the jury wondering if he can he's reading them to see if they're buying the story.
Oh, that's fascinating, Susan, that he was wondering if they're believing him. Wow. Yeah. Okay, so on the cross, and the cross, I'll be honest, I wanted more. I wanted more from the cross, but apparently it did the job. Here's him struggling to remember key details from the night in question.
I want to be very clear about the timeline, okay? What time did you and Marcy make love on the 7th?
I don't know what time we made love. It was in the evening between a movie.
Okay, then let's back up. What time did you eat?
In the evening sometime.
Not in the evening.
Events are very easy. Timelines are difficult.
How many movies did you watch?
2 or 3.
And what time between the movies did you make love?
What time? 8 o'clock hour?
8 o'clock?
Possibly. 7, 8, somewhere.
Susan, tell us what you're picking up on.
Okay. All right. So first of all, these loss of mental states, we see this very commonly. I don't remember. I don't recall. I think so. I'm not certain because they don't really want to pigeonhole themselves into it. So this attorney was really good in going back. So this is what we call framing. So you go back and you grab that one frame because he's saying about the popcorn. So he's actually kind of hanging himself along the way because he's setting some little timelines, some events that happened. And so what she's doing is she's replaying the tape back going, okay, fine. I'm going to start here and go from there. And when he does that, that's where he starts to trip up and he's kind of looking up. He's trying to grasp stuff out of the air. He's flustered. And but again, overall, he's shoulder shrugging. You see a lot of what we call cognitive load when he's trying to sell it. You see all this scrunching up in his forehead is because that's where he's really trying hard. And if you look really close, you can see a bulging vein right here on the one side. So that is a part of when somebody is really trying to force something, really sell something. Their cognition and emotion is on fire, okay? And so when he's thinking really hard, you might see a vein pop out. We see the same thing in Brian Koberg. In fact, I write about just that vein popping in my new book. And so it's there anyway. Yeah. It's a psychophysiological response to high stress or cognitive load when you're lying.
Wow.
Yeah.
As I'm looking at him, Susan, I can't tell, my eyesight's not great. If it's a shadow or if it's like a vein in the forehead too. Do you see what I mean?
Yes, it's right there, and there's also another one right here.
Yes.
But here's where Julie, how you know this is different. You look at it beforehand, then you look at it then. So you look at baseline. If it wasn't there before and all of a sudden appeared, then you can tie it to that stimulus. That's how I do this, okay? And then, his eyes kind of rolling around, he's shrugging, he's uncertain, he's trying to come up with an answer, but he can't do it on the fly. And the reason why he can't is because he can't. So that's why the attorney was taking kind of what we call a cognitive interview. Let's go back, let's replay and start from that point then, and that's where he trips up because everyone remembers, and this is very common, they remember things in a linear fashion, right? This is what happened, that's what happened next, and so forth. And when they can't do it in a linear fashion, you might see deception.
Oh, wow.
Or
And
when you do see it in a linear fashion, you'll see deception.
yes, and you're telling us we're seeing it here with him, so the jury made the right decision. Susan Constantine, thank you very much for your insight and analysis. Always great to have it here. We'll see you soon. Friends at home, thank you for being with us. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, here's what's next on Opening Statements.
What's your name and what's going on?
My name is Brendan Banfield. I'm a federal agent. This is my house. There's somebody here. I shot him. But he stabbed her.
That was one of the few times we heard Brendan Banfield's voice. As we look ahead to the defense case, which starts this morning, we're wondering, will we hear from him again?
This is the Court TV Podcast.
Welcome back. And now for what's tipping the scales of justice. We're expecting to see the defense start its case this morning in the Au Pair Affair murder trial. Now remember, they don't have a burden. They're choosing to present evidence. And we're wondering, are they going to call Brendan Banfield? Now, he's the defendant accused of murdering his wife, Christine, and another man named Joseph Ryan. Police say that this was a staged home invasion plot to make him look like the hero and to get his wife out of the picture so he could be with his au pair. Now, the only time we've really heard this guy's voice is on the 911 call. Take a listen.
And what's your name and what's going on?
My name is Brendan Banfield. I'm a federal agent. This is my house. There's somebody here. I shot him. But he stabbed her. She's bleeding. She's got several marks on her neck. What do I do?
The defense estimates their case could take 3 or 4 days. So what we're hearing is that this case is likely going into next week. So who are we going to hear from? What's the defense team going to do? Let's bring in retired district attorney and Court TV legal analyst, OG, Josh Markey. Josh, good morning. All right, so what do you think? Do you think we're going to see this guy take the stand?
Well, as a former prosecutor who's tried a lot of murder cases, I'd love for them to put him on the stand. And as someone who has defended at least 3 capital murder cases, I'd keep him off the stand. The jury has already heard him essentially give several key pieces of information. I'm a federal agent. I shot somebody who was attacking my wife. So that's in front of them, even though it's not his testimony. If I were the prosecutor, I couldn't wait to get my hands on him. So I'd be surprised if they put him on.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Do you think that the defense is doing well enough that they may not need to run this risk?
Well, they clearly made some headway with the state's expert. I think if not to go back too far, but in the O.J. Simpson case, there was incredibly compelling evidence of DNA. But that witness, a woman named Robin Cotton, was on the stand for weeks and weeks. And the jury ended up sort of just dismissing what was incredibly damning evidence. So the most damning evidence is obviously the au pair's testimony. And from what I can tell, if I were the defense, I'd keep him off the stand because it just gives the prosecution a chance to say, wait a minute, your wife was into kinky sex. She invited a man to your house while you were there, and then you just happened to kill both of them, or they happened to kill each other. I mean, it's a bizarre story.
Yeah, it sure is, Josh. Great insight. Let's hear from the au pair, Miss Juliana Magalhaes, pleaded to manslaughter. She has a promise, so she says, of time served for this testimony. Let's listen to some of what she says she witnessed.
And a few times I looked, and I was able to see him stabbing her, and he would stab, and other times he would hold the knife in a position how it was.
Josh, I've got another question for you. Do you think we're going to see the au pair again? Do you think the defense may call her?
I doubt it. I mean, her testimony, on the one hand, her testimony is unbelievably damning, and the defense's version is essentially that, for example, it was the au pair that made up this supposedly phony email account, and that's really a stretch. I mean, this was a 20-year-old, immigrant who didn't really know very much, so I'd be surprised if we see her again.
Yeah. In terms of who else we might see, Josh, do you think we talked earlier in the show about the Commonwealth perhaps needing a crime scene reconstructionist here? Do you think the defense may have an expert like that?
I think they are going to call somebody, it's close to junk science to say, well, you could interpret this physical evidence as X. And the fact of the matter is that the crime scene evidence is helpful to a jury, but it really hasn't reached the level of DNA or scientific evidence where you can say this blood splatter means this. And frankly, prosecutors that have tried to do that have gotten themselves in huge trouble in recent years. Courts have said you're overreaching and even reversed convictions that are based too much on that.
That's interesting. If you had to give us your best educated guess, Josh, what kind of a defense do you think we're going to see here?
Go with the fact that this guy doesn't look like a murderer. He was a criminal investigator for the IRS. He was a federal law enforcement officer. And although his story is kind of outrageous, all you need is one juror to believe that his wife, in fact, invited this strange man into their home. And then, if that's enough for that kernel of reasonable doubt, as defense attorneys are fond of saying, you only need one juror.
Right. For a hung jury. We'll see what this jury does when the time comes. Josh Marquis, great having you this morning. Thanks so much for the analysis. We'll see you soon. And friends at home, thank you for watching Opening Statements. That's all for this episode. But guess what? If you missed it and you liked it, well, guess what? You can share it with your friends. You can watch it again. We put the episodes up on courttv.com every single day for you. Just click on that red shows tab. See it right there. It's circled, and you can watch them. That's all for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and it's been great being with you. On this show, I am calling out any pants on fire moments in our big trials and true crime stories, and I want you to come along with me. Opening Statements is live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern on Court TV. Thank you for downloading this episode. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can watch past shows anytime you like on courttv.com.